New day, new goals, let's own it. It's a beautiful evening. This may look like LA, but this is where I'm from, good old New Jersey. And in this episode, I'm really excited because this is someone that I genuinely relate to and I look at his whole life path. I mean, first of all, he was an entrepreneur before he even knew what entrepreneurship really was. He started at only 7 years old. He went from at a young age making millions to losing everything, selling everything, also having $726,000 in debt to now bouncing back, being someone who never had friends to now working with some of the most influential entrepreneurs of our time. We're gonna talk about flow state, we're gonna talk about consciousness, because you know our theme is all about conscious creators. Somebody that I really respect, I've worked with Scott, I've become good friends with him. You know, we're gonna get into how we both feel connected to the universe, as you should, and we're gonna get into the complete untold story of none other than Scott Oldford. I want you guys to know, you guys are about to hear such a remarkable story of one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our generation, who is, you know, a conscious creator on a whole nother level, but is someone that I am really genuinely grateful for. He has helped me and our team significantly. So bro, thank you so much for everything you continue to do to support me, support our team, and welcome to Leaders Create Leaders.
Thank you, brother. It's really funny. I don't know if I really knew what the word conscious meant until I actually, 7-8 months ago.
Right.
And I remember first when someone actually said the word, I kind of got almost fearful inside of what it actually meant, because I didn't know what it meant and I didn't feel that by any stretch of the imagination. And it's like kind of living your life without intention,
right,
which I don't think anybody actually teaches you to do, because we're so in the box of what we need to do every single day, the grind, A to B to Z, and all the, the check boxes and so on and so forth. And then one day you're like, you know what? I want to live life on my own terms. And I think that's the day where you actually understand what consciousness actually is.
Yeah.
When it goes back
I think
to it.
it's so difficult for this generation because of how because of how so much information is being shared so rapidly on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so many entrepreneurs are overwhelmed, information overload, social media scrolling. It's like a never-ending, of consumption. So it's really hard to become enlightened and separate yourself and really dive in.
It's really difficult because it's we're in the age of everything but nothing at this exact same time, where it's it just gets so overwhelming that you're just, you just turn off, right? I mean, if I look at my social media now, I've turned off as much as I possibly can. I've turned off as many signals so that I can output signals instead of always consistently just inputting signal.
Right.
And then being very intentional on what it is I actually want to learn, instead of just scrolling through the news feed or the Instagram feed and learning what the algorithm wants to teach me, because I want to be the algorithm, not somebody else controlling what I actually necessarily learn.
Damn, that's so powerful. You controlling the algorithm. I love that. You know our theme is conscious creators, so I kind of want to know, what is Scott's take on consciousness? Whenever I hang out with him and we're off camera, we're hanging out, we're always talking about this connection that we have to the universe. So I want to ask Scott, how do you actually tap into that? How do you actually tap into the consciousness of who you really are?
This manifestation, which, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even a year ago, if you said the word manifestation, I had some level of resistance, right? And I think we do, generally have a level of resistance to saying that, well, here's what I want, and so I will get it without any actual plan. How crazy is that, right? And so, and so when we sort of get down to it, it's just when I write something down, it happens, right? It happens. And so my new problem is the fact that I talk about this with Libby, my very soon to be future wife. My biggest problem now, I don't know what to put down the piece of paper, right? So this manifestation, I think, occurred for me, and my life started flowing, as I would say it, when I almost let myself go out of control and allowed myself to drop out of trying to be something or trying to be someone or trying to, what we talked about before, trying to seek validation, trying to control something that cannot be controlled.
Yeah.
And when that happened, when I just let everything go and say, you know what, at the end of the day, thus far, I don't think I'm going to get off of this planet alive. Thus far, the only certain day I have is that I will probably die.
Yes.
And you know what? There was also a day I looked in the mirror and I said, you know what? And you know, I was $1 million in debt 4 or 5 years ago. And there was a certain point between then and now where I looked in the mirror and said, you know what? It is all going to be okay. And I wish I could have looked myself in the mirror at $1 million in debt and said that, because I could have. It was just a choice that I didn't take at the time. And ever since I had that day, my entire life, whatever I wish to create, I can create. And I think there's a lot of power in the mind of believing that we can do what we do, because there's really not much out there that we can't not do.
Right.
I mean, we literally, human beings, make the impossible possible time and time again. Just back to the stillness point just for a second.
Sure.
I think the stillness is by far one of the biggest keys to being able to unlock the potential of your mind, your brain, and the real inner intelligence because we're connected to the universe at some level of an interintelligence that doesn't come necessarily from here. And I believe the further we get into stillness, the further we have the ability to do that. And I'm not going to say that it's easy. I'm not going to say I'm good at it. I can barely meditate for more than 10 minutes without losing my mind.
Bro, I got a massage this weekend.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a massage. I should be just like,
hard.
I actually caught my mind. I'd be like, then I would be like,
consistent.
oh, wait, let me focus on my breath, let me be still. And then within...
Again, and over,
boom,
and over.
And then again.
So I've actually, I've worked with someone here in LA, and, I work with her 2-3 times a week, and she's massage, but also a little bit on the energy worker side and all these different types of things. And I say, she has made me more money than anybody else in my entire life, because she's allowed me to get into this like state of flow in my mind. And I always say that, that and driving cars in the mountains of Malibu are the 2 things that have made me the most money in my entire life. And it's because it's allowed me to get into like that flow state as much as I can. Yeah. Because entrepreneurs, it's like we're driven to be not still, right? Yeah. We're always wanting to be in motion. It's kind of like we feel like the demons might come out if we stop someday. You know what I mean? The inner desire, for me, the inner version of myself that knows that I'm afraid to be perhaps alone, or afraid to be perhaps still, right? Right.
It's almost like I felt like guilty.
Yeah.
When I would go to like just rest.
Yeah.
Right? I'd be
you can't take a nap because
I should be doing this, I should be doing that,
No.
And really, it was just like, no, I needed to rest so that I could be able to perform at a higher level.
I think it's because we associate motion to momentum, but momentum doesn't necessarily require our motion, right? So if we create a company structure that's based upon momentum, and we can then take ourselves out of the motion, then we can actually be in stillness, which powers a higher level of actual momentum in what we're going after. Yeah. And I think it's because at the beginning you got to hustle.
Right.
And hustle is motion. Yeah. And then you get so messed up from hustling for, this is me too.
Yeah.
15 years of hustling. Right. And now I don't have to hustle anymore. Right. Actually, when I hustle, I lose money. When I hustle, I lose things, right? Yeah. So I had to go to the opposite side.
Our life is just filled up with these moments that really shape who we become. I really genuinely believe that we're a product of our experiences, both the highs and the lows. What's a pinnacle moment in your life that you remember that completely shifted the trajectory of your life or who you became? For Scott, I want to get into that one moment where he had a $10 million business. It could have been the height of where he was as an entrepreneur, but what caused him? What was the moment that caused him to shut it down completely at the height of his revenue and go completely nomad?
And I won this top innovator in Canada award. Mm-hmm. I don't know who I honestly, it could have been like an entire psychedelic experience and I wouldn't even know the difference because it was so weird. It was like no one nominated me for it, and then it was paid for me to go from Newfoundland to Toronto because I couldn't afford it. And I went there, and by the 3rd day I was just like, you know what? I am not peaking at 21. Like, that is not something I'm going to do. I am not going to go back and live in my mother's basement.
Right.
Like, that is not, I'm not going to make that my life, right? And so I went back and I went away from this agency and I started a brand new business right from scratch, but with this new level of mindset. Because what I had done is I anchored everything to my past. I anchored everything to my ego. That agency did $1 million in its first year. Yeah. Then from there, I was like, still didn't really find my purpose. I was just trying. I think it's really hard to find your purpose until you've made some level of money. You know what I mean? Which is why I always say,
yeah,
I always say, don't get too attached to finding the purpose before you have some level of abundance. Because if you do that, you're going to be you're always going to be shifting from one business to the next because you still haven't found the purpose. Still haven't found the thing. You still haven't found what this is or that is or whatever. And we'll come back to that on how I think you can build assets around you so that when you're ready to go and do what it is that you find your purpose is, you can do it fast, you can do it with momentum, so on and so forth. And then the last 3.5 years have just been a blur. And it feels like, I had a pinnacle point. I had an experience that we'll probably get into. I had an experience. And the next morning it was like the wraps of the ego were lifted from within me. And I sort of had this refreshed, an epiphany of what I just go do. Just go serve. You know what I mean? I think sometimes when we are the king and queens of our kingdom, the moment that we are looking to be served is the moment we lose the kingdom, because your people will go and find a new king or queen, right? That happens in history. So you have to serve your people, right, and then your bounty will be vast. Yeah. And that was the day I realized that, I think. And I pretty much started from scratch. I sold everything, went from Newfoundland to Toronto, sold absolutely everything I had. I fired my entire team. I restarted the entire business again. So I'm great at like blowing things up and then starting them again. You know what I mean?
Did you take time when you had that experience? I do want to get into that. Did you take some time before you thought of the next thing? Like for me, it was like, it was hard. As an entrepreneur, it's like almost like you have withdrawals. Like again, being, especially because I think once you've had some level of success, even if you lost it, you're bouncing back. People are just interested, right? What are you doing next? What are you doing next? What are you doing next?
Pressure.
And you also put this pressure on yourself. And that happened to me after Elite Daily, and it was just like, but I went through thinking about like, well, I don't want to just start another business to start another business.
Sure.
I want to do something that I feel is fulfilling for me.
So I think that's the level of consciousness you can get to when you have some level of financial back, right? I think it's really hard to get to when you're looking at the bank account and it's going lower every single month and you're on a ticker.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it would never have happened if I didn't have the exit.
If I had an exit, I can say this very, very easily. Actually, you know what? That's actually not truth. So I'll fast forward to 7 months ago, September 2017. I had enough, done, didn't want my current business. So keep in mind, I grew a business, multi-million-dollar, doing $300K plus a month. On paper, made it.
Yeah. This is after.
This is after the
next move.
This is the next
educating.
Yeah.
You start. I think it was like you were teaching people how to create
leads. Lead generate. Yeah. So I created a company called Leadcraft and did really well, right? And I did it by mistake. Again, I mean, almost every business I've ever done has been by mistake. I mean, I always, I feel like I'm just following the breadcrumb trails. And like Steve Jobs said, we can't connect the dots forward. We can only connect them backwards.
Right.
And I feel like that. I just go with the breadcrumbs, right? Yeah. And it was a massive hit in the marketplace. Wow. And I went from
$300K a month.
Yeah, and well, not only that, but not only was it a financial basis, but I went from having an email list of 1,000 people to hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs that I was now impacting. Right? I mean, imagine the power of being able to spread your message to 100,000 plus entrepreneurs at a push of a button.
Yeah.
That's what got me. The money was always whatever. It was the ability to articulate and distribute what I had. That always got me. And of course, that's because I'm fueled by significance, not by certainty. Right? So you find people that are driven by certainty, they love the ability to have financial capital.
Yeah.
But people that are driven by significance, such as myself, we are driven by being able to get our message distributed to more people.
Right.
And trying to manage those as the human needs are so difficult. But all this was happening, and what ended up happening, I had a panic attack one night. It was December 2016, and I had a panic attack, and I was looking at my day, and I was looking at my next day. I look at my next day, and I was just like, the next 3 days, I have nothing that I'd want to do. Like, I have a jam-packed schedule, and there's not a single thing in there that I want to do, and I had a panic attack. And so, I canceled everything, and then I had another panic attack in March. And I was just like, there's still nothing I want to do. And I'd go to mentors and, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, the mentors I had at that time said, well, Scott, that's part of the game of business. If you want to be able to have a business that just pumps out money, then sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do. Now, I bought into that for a little while.
Yeah.
But there's only there's only so much point where you look at the bank account and you're like, it doesn't really matter anymore. There's only so much you can do before you're like, this just does not light me up.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind,
because I think there's like an aspect of entrepreneurship, and I'm not talking about the one of where you're at today.
Yeah.
Because we're obviously going through getting into this breakthrough, but
Sure.
before then, when you're a great entrepreneur, I believe your success is directly correlated to the amount of stress you can handle on a daily basis.
totally, 100%.
Right?
100%.
Until you get to a kind of like
Leverage model.
leverage and you're like, fuck it. Like,
Well,
because you're at
it's
that
like
level of
you-
success now,
yeah.
you're like, okay, it's not worth it.
It's the level of success where you can go and create money instantaneously on demand at any time because you have the audience or you have the relationships or you have the, at the end of the day, it's 3 currencies: money, relationship, and audience, right? And so if you're building all 3, then you're going to have what I call the nuclear effect, which I'll talk about a little bit later. My new book that's coming up, that's exactly what I talk about. Most people only focus on money.
Yeah.
If you only focus on money, or you're going to be at some point screwed, because money may or may not be worth anything at some point in the future.
Right.
And then further than that, if you have once you had audience, once you had relationships, you would feel as if, you know what, I got it. Yeah. And that's at the point at which I realized at September 2017, where it's like, you know what, I'm going to blow this company up because I know I got the relationships and I got the audience, and I don't know what my next step is, but I know I have the resources and the currency to be able to convert it into money if I need to.
Right.
And that's basically where, and I keep in mind, during this entire time, I was emotionally eating like crazy. Like when I was 17, I was 360 pounds. Wow. So I had that entire other piece upon this.
Wow.
Right? I was 180 by the time I was 18. So in 16 months, I basically transformed my entire body. Well, I transpired right back to what it was because I was no longer happy. I wasn't happy. I wasn't content. I wasn't all these different types of things.
Right.
And so in September, I said, you know what? I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to kill the company. I'm going to go nomadic, and I'm seeking something.
Yeah.
Don't know what it is, but I need to find it. And I remember calling up my COO. I had 5 days in the mountains of Utah, and I had an amazing experience and journey there. And I called my COO up on the Monday, and I was like, and he's been with me for 6 years, so he's been with me like through, the ups and downs and everything else. And I'm like, Aaron, I think I got to do it again, brother. And then he was like, what do you mean you got to do it again? Oh my God. And I'm like, I got to blow it all up again, man. I got to reinvent it again. I got to get the next version that fits me, who I am now, not who I was. And, because, I had the option to stay in and try to make it a business and hire a CEO and do the whole thing. I was just like, I don't care. Like, I don't really care.
Oh my God, I can't imagine what he was thinking.
Yeah,
Like, what do you want, man?
Yeah, he was just like, okay, what does that mean? And I was just like, well, we're gonna let 70% of the team go, and we're gonna do this and that. And he's like, so what are we gonna sell? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Like, I'm gonna come home and we'll figure it out. And then I came up with what I was going to essentially do on the plane, on the way home, as a lot of entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
And
I think anything that's moving, that's for me. If I'm on a train or a plane, like
emotion. Yeah, it's motion. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's definitely motion. I can't wait for the day that I can actually afford a private plane.
Yeah.
Because I'm literally just gonna be like, listen, I need to go right. Like, let's get me up in the air. You know. So that was a fascinating.
For me to be at boat. You take me on your plane, I'll bring you on the boat.
Yeah, there we go. We'll do the trade.
Cool.
And so that really started. You know, I went nomadic, and 3 weeks later, I met the love of my life.
Wow.
I ended up going through a period of about 3 months where I worked like 1 or 2 hours a day then. So I knew what I was doing. I got a little bit of motion behind it. I got a 6-figure per month business going pretty much in 30 days, every single month. So I basically created a multi-million-dollar business in scratch in less than 2 months while I was working less than 2 hours a day. But again, I had the audience. I knew what I was doing. I had a lot of assets that were there, right? So I was like, all right, let's get some sustainability. Let's get a little core team.
Do you ever think ahead, like, man, am I really doing everything so I know that I'm living the most fulfilled life that I can? I'm creating what I want to create. Like, when do you question everything?
I think, there's a couple pieces in that. I started journaling a while ago. I got a Google Doc going, and It's so interesting because I go back and so I go through Google Doc. I think one of the best things I ever did was start working with a therapist because we go through those actual journal entries, and then I go back in time looking at these journal entries, and I'm just like, man, I was a stupid guy, right? I was a stupid guy about 2 weeks ago. Right? And in many ways, I feel like my creation is almost my future self talking to my current self, and as a reminder for these certain things. But when it all clicked, I think there's many ways for that to click. I think there's many experiences, but I feel always that there has to be one experience where it's just kind of like, that at the end of a movie, sometimes they have all these different pieces of the movie that all go in like 30 seconds of time, almost the highlight reel of the actual movie itself. I feel like we all have to have one of those where we're like, well, that is the reason why I'm here, or that is the reason, or this is the moment there. It was just like, this is why I'm going to do it. And for me, it ended up being psychedelics that made that moment in time, right? A few minutes ago I said 3.5 years ago I had that like experience, and that was the experience. It was psychedelic LSD, and since then it's been a very. I think what it did more than anything else, it eroded away a layer of ego. Yeah. Right. I think if we look at where we want to be and where we want to go, and the difference in between, or who we are and where we want to go. Sorry. I think it's ego. I think it's self-judgment. I think it's us feeling needing validation. It's us feeling that we need validation from ourselves or validation from other people, or we need to protect ourselves. I think one of the biggest problems that entrepreneurs have is the fact that when they build something, now that they have pride that they built it, they can't let it go. Yeah. Right? So many.
Well, we're so attached to so many things.
We're so attached. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the ego wants to protect us. So they want us to do what's safe. They want us to.
Of course. At the end of the day, we're put on the planet. Be comfortable, have sex, reproduce, and don't screw up too much stuff in the meantime. Right? Like that is what our DNA is built for. At the end of the day. And then of course us entrepreneurs are here being like, no, like I'm not cool with that. But we have this internal struggle between that and what we want, and what we want, that and growth. Right. So that was January 2015, January 26, 2015. And my life has never been the same by any stretch of the imagination since then. And that was a pinnacle point. And it wasn't the point, I don't feel like I have this overarching like destination purpose where it's like, some people you meet, they're like, we want 10 million people to do this by this date. I don't feel like I'm there yet. Right. And I've disattached myself from having some like hardcore metric. I believe I'm put on the planet Earth to help evolve the human species, to help us evolve as Homo sapiens.
I always say push humanity forward.
Correct, exactly. I think that right now I'm focused on being able to serve my kingdom and being able to create financial wealth, being able to create abundance of relationships like this. Yeah. And an audience.
Live your best life.
Yeah, to live your best life at the same time. And to be able to have an audience of people that have some underlying reasoning that they're following you. That's the three things. Because with those three things, when I figure out what that purpose is, who knows if it's an LSD trip, or I'm in, some weird place of the world with monks, or, in Antarctica, or like wherever that moment in time where the right time and right place for that idea to get inserted into my head.
Yeah.
And me being stupid enough to think I can do it.
Yeah.
Then that is then the point where I'm like, well, now I have the resources to do it. And so right now, the way that I help evolve the human species is ensure that entrepreneurs can have abundance, they can have freedom. I believe it takes 7 figures in a business for most entrepreneurs to have that moment of why. And the more entrepreneurs that have that moment, have abundance and freedom so that they can ask the question why.
Why, yeah.
The further our planet is going to evolve. And that's really what I do on a day-to-day basis now, because I've built so many 7-figure companies.
Yeah.
I'm not any expert on building 8-figure ones, but 7-figure is easy. 8 figures, that's this year, hopefully.
And you're like letting whatever flow through you.
Yeah.
And so how does an entrepreneur have that kind of
I mean, I think first is the fact that I think we all have the ability to be channeled through, right? Information, knowledge to become through us, but not of us, as Jason Silva talks about in a couple of his videos. I think the whole idea behind competition, number one, you need to compete with yourself and nobody else, right? And friendly competition, not trying to take yourself down, not trying to judge yourself or trying to put yourself to this, level where you literally cannot ever achieve.
Right.
I think that's the first thing. The second thing is most people don't realize that, and of course in your world from a personal branding perspective, your biggest advantage is not to compete with anyone.
Yeah.
Because if you build a blue ocean and you build and you amplify your unfair advantage, we all have an unfair advantage. The way that we speak, the way that we think, the way that we have values, our expertise, our knowledge, our talent. Nobody has that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's only
our
one
voice.
There's only one Gerard, there's only one Scott, there's only one anybody.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can authentically get to that person, if you can reach inside of you and find that person,
Yeah. I say
everything blows up.
I agree.
Everything blows up. Problem is there's so many layers that have been developed by teachers, by your parents, by your friends, by society,
Yes.
that you don't even know who you are, right? You think you have beliefs. All your beliefs are just pre-indoctrinated into you by somebody.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's one of the biggest pieces. Like, you have to let go of the beliefs that perhaps you've had and adopt new belief systems and not be tied to them. Right?
One of the things I think you did that I would recommend, and I think I related to because I've done too, is when you want to have that shift to break through all of those layers and to find what I call the leader within.
Yep.
You have to completely do something drastic, like what you did going to Utah. And I would recommend for anyone, like, completely shift from the bubble that you created around you. Like, drop everything and just go somewhere. Let go. Go somewhere, like, no plan, completely uncertain. Let go and do it for whether it's a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 or 5 days.
Well, don't even put a resultant on it. Because I don't think you can put a resultant on it. I think what you just have is, if you could fall in love with the process of just being a human being, not a doing, being a human being, just being, right? If you can just fall in love with that, you can just fall in love with the human experience that we, so far as we know, only get one chance of.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there? Like that's it. Like that's the fun of it.
Do you feel that is where true happiness and joy comes from?
I think it is I think it is actually, because everything else relates to that. Everything else is that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Us humans, we complicate everything, but ultimately, like, happiness is when we just let go and we're just
It's like perfection is not the art of control. It's the art of letting go, like from Black Swan, and it is so true.
The journey that you have from a psychedelic standpoint. When I went on my journey, I died. You almost, like, basically you're reborn. Do you feel that you had, by having a glimpse of death or afterlife or another realm? Like, can you talk to me about that?
So I don't necessarily feel like I've had that necessary experience.
Okay.
Not under perhaps what I've gone through, nor what I have needed. No. I've done psychedelics quite a bit. over the past 3.5 years, both in a ways that perhaps you have, as well as in a microdose type of way, fueling creativity.
Yeah. That I haven't done. That's like the Steve Jobs micro LSD.
Yeah,
That's always very much interested me. Talk to me about that. Like,
well, there's not a lot of documentation out there from people I trust, right? And I mean, I'm glad that people look at me as being successful, because if not, I mean, the mystic and
forget it. There's probably a stigma there. Like,
yeah, there's always stigma there. Right. And so, the brilliant man and the madman lives in the same pool and drinks the same water. Just one is drowning.
Right.
And so, for me, it's been this incredible just journey of understanding how to use not just substance, but your mind, and being able to understand. I mean, you can use sex to get to a point of psychedelic experience. You can use meditation and breath work. Yep. You can use all of these different types of things. And
yoga.
Psychedelics was the barrier for me that allowed me to kind of like enter into this world and then let go of all my belief systems and be like, oh, you know what? I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I think the day that you realize you know nothing and all your belief systems may or may not be correct is the day all the real stuff starts happening.
Right.
Because since then,
I feel like that's where real creativity even is.
It is because you're no longer judging yourself.
Right.
And as soon as you don't judge yourself, that's when you can open up the canvas and create the painting that really inspires you. That's a moment where you can write the words where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, Kanye tweeted that recently, and it was really inspired by protecting your energy and flow.
Yeah.
Because your creativity is everything. But we live in a world where it's every day. We're getting so much noise, so that it's like, how do you tap into flow? It's extremely difficult. And until you learn to practice breath work or meditate, or you're able to have the courage of micro LSD without the stigma, or therapy, whatever that may be, to block out that noise. I feel entrepreneurs and just humans in general, they can't tap in.
Well, I think that's actually, I think I was tapped in when I was younger, because there's no other way to explain it, because I don't know what I was doing when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager and having success, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I didn't have some master plan. No, I mean, I didn't have some master plan. I was just like, again, following the breadcrumb trails. And at which point I stopped following the breadcrumb trails because I was so bought into my own ego and my own self, is where everything just went to, went to crap.
Right.
So my best dialogue to the fact of how do we get in the flow?
Let go of everything.
Well, let go of everything, because I didn't have anything when I was younger, and by God, I was in flow, because I was in so much flow that all these things were happening. I didn't even know it was happening.
It's interesting. That's how Elite Daily became massively successful. An 8-figure business, and it was I lost everything, and I was like, okay, we know nothing. What are we gonna do that just like we love? It's gonna be fun. Right. We're naive about it. And it was like, let's start a publication for millennials, by millennials, and just write whatever comes to us. Whatever comes to us. Let's interview each other, let's interview our friends. And lo and behold, that naivety and just kind of just going with the flow and just doing.
Yeah, it's as my good friend Richie Norton says, it's the art of doing something stupid. Right, and the art of doing something is like, this shouldn't even work.
Right,
but it is,
and that's what happened. Yeah,
and so this brought in a really interesting sort of paradox to my life, because even now, since September, I now have 3 multi-million-dollar businesses. So I literally let go of everything, and I started 3 different businesses that all have multi-million-dollar run rate in the last 7 months. Just simply because of the fact that I'm like, oh, well, I don't know this, but there's an opportunity there. Let's go try this thing. Yeah. Or let's go try this thing. And here's a rather really interesting thing. Once you do something, once you let it go, once you want to let something go, like there's the S curve, right? So at the beginning, you're not really good. Then you get to engagement and things are good. And then you get to mastery. Mastery is the death of the entrepreneur. As soon as we know we've mastered something, we want to let it go.
Oh, wow.
Right? So we either need to blow it up, or we need to sell it, or we need to get someone else in charge, right? We have 3 options. Hire a CEO, sell the business, or blow it up, right? Yeah. Most of the time, we don't have the opportunity to do anything but blow it up because it's not big enough. So what I'm starting to get good at is finding CEOs to run my companies.
Because
I'm like, I can't do this blow up thing over and over and over again.
I respect that. I respect that. Very
Right?
similar model.
And that, of course, has become sort of the new paradigm, the new reality for me in this place of new flow and in this place of letting go. I think one of the biggest pieces we have to do, entrepreneurs try to block their time off, right? We read all these productivity books. All productivity books, in my opinion, for the most part, are built for people making less than 7 figures. I've very rarely read anything because productivity and flow don't go together.
You're right.
It's very difficult to structure
because you need to
flow.
almost not have
anything. Yeah. So at least 4 days a week, I have nothing on my calendar, right? You know, I mean, like I have this today with you, right? And then I have nothing really at the end of the day. And then tomorrow's a work day, Wednesday's a work day, and then the rest until next week is 0 meetings.
Right.
Now, I may end up doing all kinds of weird stuff on that. I might go to the beach. I might, I just got a new drum set.
I love the drums. I'm coming over.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet.
And so, one of the things I realized, I sold my drum kit because I was in debt, and I never sold it on choice. I sold it out of necessity, and I needed to bring that back.
I love that. I just got a drum set. I convinced my buddy Ryan Blair to buy one at his house. I was rocking out with him. Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
And so this flow, what's interesting, this flow that you find for creativity and for ideas and everything, you kind of hit that flow state. You don't even know you're in it. You don't know it until you're out of it. And you hit that flow state, whether it's being in nature, or whether it's being...
Because that allows you to let go of the anxiety.
Yes.
It's not easy.
And that's why you have, in my opinion, let me not stroke that painting. It's, in my experience, easier to have a 7-figure business that's profitable, sustainable, and scalable, has people inside of it running it. Because right now, like one of my companies takes 4 hours a week to run. The other one takes about 9, and the other one takes about 2. My entire work week's about 26 hours. And what I found is that if you go above 26 hours, I've tinkered with this as much as I have time for at the end of the day, but once you go above 26 hours, the ability to have enough time to go into flow and live your life just goes down by so much that you don't get in the flow. And you become a human doing instead of a human being. And nobody has ever been able to get in the flow while they're hustling. It just does not happen.
I agree.
Just does not happen. Right?
I agree. All of my major flow has been me being in moments of just like of letting go. Primarily traveling or getting on the ocean. I love being on the ocean.
Yeah.
Just like boom.
I don't do it. I don't do enough of that.
We gotta do it, bro.
I used to scuba dive, and I haven't scuba dived in years.
Let's do both of those together.
That would be so much fun.
Excited.
That's so much fun. And sea-doos, I love
cool.
sea-doos.
We talked about consciousness. We talked about flow state, tapping into the universe, overcoming failure. We talked about all things entrepreneurship. We talked about not just about what it takes to build a multi-million-dollar business, but what it means to have that true purpose and making a real impact and pushing humanity forward and serving at a high level and having real influence. So I appreciate you, Scott, for being on this episode. I appreciate you for watching this episode. If it's impacted you in any way, do me a favor, let us know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and make sure to share this with your friends. We don't have sponsors. We do this because we genuinely care about making conscious content to inspire you to become a world-class leader. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm your host, Gerard Adams. Peace.